Hi, everybody. Glad to be here and to share at one more Beam Summit. It's, I think my fifth or something now. Talking generally, I'm more interested in, we'll call it the technology and what, like the kind of nuance. But I remember having organized past Beam Summits how important it is to share use cases. So I've started a few months back at a company called Azra AI. We're a med tech company. And for part of what we're doing and what I'm undertaking now, we're using Beam. So I thought I'd share a little bit about that. Since I get a paycheck from this place, and I think they do kind of interesting work, wanted to call out Azra AI. They identify patients in need of care faster, connect them to care sooner, and manage the whole patient journey in one end-to-end platform. Doing lots of things. That's pretty vague. This is more about Beam and tech than the company, though. So thanks for that slide. And this one for marketing. I don't think we need to get super deep into that. I'll leave it up there for a moment, just, because why not? Okay, so I'm going to talk about three kind of things. One, med tech was new to me. So for those, hopefully some are in, and this isn't going to be too boring. Maybe this is interesting otherwise for those that are, kind of curious. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I'll talk about then a very specific use case that we're working on, and the vague notion of future, right? Some things I'd either like to do or some open questions for the Beam community here. All right, so we're talking health tech. HIPAA, lots of people have heard of that. Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Go read more if you want. Gemini gave me this two-sentence description. I think that kind of covers it, but people act like HIPAA is a huge deal. If you've been in other industries or whatever, there's all sorts of compliance needs. It's fundamentally not different. Protect your data. Maybe we can get into ethics or concerns on that this is, more or less important for various reasons, but do what you're supposed to do. I call out High Trust. It's a for-profit company, whatever. It's something we adhere to, at least at Azra, and kind of the same vein, like SOC 2, whatever else, right? So names that are meaningful. I want to call out some medical standards. There is DICOM. There's a Health Level 7 organization, and we'll talk about these here. So digital imaging and communications in medicine, DICOM. That's stuff like this. I wanted to put together a little video of this. Could imagine lots of images stacked up and back on top of each other for a more three-dimensional view. Not really relevant to Beam, at least currently, but since we're talking medical standards. These are the important things and, common. So HL7 International Company Standards Board has a V2 electronic medical record standard. It looks like this. Right? Pipe delimited, a bunch of characters, does all sorts of stuff, right? But this is, although it has been superseded, right? First introduced in 1989. Currently they're on 2.9. As you go from 2.0 through 2.8, 2.9, some of those rows just get an extra pipe and some more stuff. Nice and, version compatible at least. I think at the end I wasn't going to share, but there is a V3. I haven't found anybody that uses HL7 V3. It's XML. So I guess over there. So another important standard, MLLP. Originally LLP, the M in it is for the minimum LLP. It's the transport mechanism for HL7 over TCP. Not sure why they needed a specific transport mechanism, There's a GitHub repo to an MLLP container. Contemporary medical believes they adhere to HL7 fire. For those in medical, you probably at least heard of this. It's not widely adopted yet, even though it got started, back in 2011. We're on HL7 fire R5. Things are slow. It's primarily REST interoperability, at least rather than MLOP, primarily JSON. The spec also supports RDF and XML. The reason these standards, I can't even get the difference in my at least own head between EMR and EHR systems. I don't know, I grabbed this from Google somewhere. Here's some of the major systems that places like hospitals use to keep track of their patients' data. Each one, as I understand it, has very individual ways of representing data within their own systems, and that's where things like HL7 v2 come in to promote some form of interoperability between. So, although there are standards and specs, there's also a lot of individual differences and deviations. That's been quite frustrating to recognize. Like, oh, you have this really nice spec. You're a, adopted system that does whatever, but I guess you let your paying customers do what they want. And if they want to repeat some fields that the spec doesn't allow, oh, well, it happens, I guess. Okay, so that's kind of the overview of med tech technologies and sets the groundwork for doing something. Okay, so here's the problem. We integrate with a lot of hospitals and large hospital systems. The scale of data is way different than in past roles at ad tech or household name consumer services, right? But many, many large hospital systems, lots of different health record systems. Hey, we need HL7 records because that's, I guess they don't export fire on their own overly. So let's at least take HL7 v2 records and let's get them over to fire to promote that interoperability. I really like standards, consistencies, make it easy to do things with each other rather than some proprietary formats. Okay, so with that as kind of my primary task, let's ingest a whole lot more data from all of our customers and get it in a usable format. Part of the push to Fire also was, the original idea was, hey, let's just either ingest these delimited files or let's quickly translate that into a non-standard JSON object just to maybe do something with it. So again, standards. So how could I do this? I didn't want to reinvent this. I would think this is well done. So I looked around. There's a bunch of commercial offerings that seem to do this. As an engineer, at least especially younger, I definitely wanted to just let me build everything myself. Now I err more on, hey, let's at least weigh build versus buy, think about long-term scale maintenance, etc. So then evaluated some other options because the commercial offerings are non-cheap. There is a Linux for Health Fire converter that only supported some message types. So that wasn't going to work for my needs off the shelves. Then it was, how deep to look at that. Looked at Microsoft's Fire converter that was robust and was a candidate. I also came across the Google Cloud Platform Healthcare Data Harmonization, Data Flow, and associated repos. That was an obvious thing to kind of dig into as a longtime Google Cloud user, Azra being on Google Cloud, and longtime Dataflow and Beam user. to call out the data GCP Healthcare API because we were a GCP customer. Hey, there's this service. Oh, it works with DICOM HL7 Fire. Oh, that made it kind of easy. So I looked at taking an example HL7 message, uploaded it to the HL7 v2 store, which successfully worked and looked like unintelligible JSON to me. But I showed it to my colleagues and we're like, oh my God, this is awesome. This makes so much sense to us. So that set me down this path. Okay, so that was enough to like, okay, let's get moving with this. So I found the healthcare data harmonization repo, the data flow repo, and MLLP, and started weaving things together. So to do some data healthcare, I weaved together a few tools. The healthcare API is mentioned, run data flow, pub/sub, BigQuery, right? Hey, pub/sub on GCP, awesome. Want to call out just various tech where things are worth looking into for those that don't. I really like pub/sub for push subscriptions, at least on non-high value, high volume data sets. Having the message queue being able to push individual messages to destinations is really nice rather than leaving a long running service polling. Naturally, at much higher scales, you just want a WebSocket or RPC connection pulling those streaming. Wanted to call out Cloud Run, again, serverless compute, any sort of container would have worked. Worth calling out, Cloud Run supports multi-container deployments, right? So you can run the notion of a Kubernetes pod in with multiple individual containers alongside each other in one Cloud Run service. So that is where we have a handler that accepts the HTTP message from pub/sub and also the MLLP service, which then goes and talks to the healthcare API. Kind of the very critical component. Hey, I don't want to have to figure out necessarily the HL7 spec to Fire transformations. Hopefully somebody's already done that. So that was done in this language called Whistle. Never heard of it before, haven't seen it used anywhere else, but it works. So at least from some initial experiments, it looks like as long as we have messages that actually adhere to the spec, everything works nicely out of this repository. We're at Beam Summit, need to make sure I'm talking about Beam, right? So the Whistle is run in Beam and Dataflow pipelines. Also, I guess worth calling out, HIPAA compliant service, etc. We package these things as Dataflow Flex templates. I should probably have Flex in the title there because there's also the V1 Dataflow template. So that was just relevant by way of using Terraform to deploy these things. And then a final output of BigQuery. Awesome for a number of reasons. And here's at least a screenshot of the individual tables as well as the relevant views that are created for all of the Fire data types. So it looks like this, right? Our integration point currently is the hospitals work with a service, and that service then puts the HL7 v2 messages into pub/sub for us. In a Cloud Run container, we have both a Go service that receives that message and on localhost goes and talks to the MLLP adapter, which in turn talks to the HL7 v2 store. Naturally, there's a dead letter queue by way of, hey, if this data is no good, this is medical data. Yeah, it's not super high volume, but it's, can be deemed as quite high value. Right, so, and then there's the Beam Dataflow job that gets a notification on new inserts into the HL7 v2 store, receives that and uses the Whistle configurations to then write data to the Firestore. It picks up those configurations or mappings out of GCS And then on insert into the Firestore, then we stream push data into BigQuery. So this is kind of where I get into real-time data transformations. Azra does a ton of other, I guess, at least in the medical realm, doing things on the order of seconds, even minutes, and at times hours is plenty sufficient. We're not doing, or there's not a significant business use case for these sort of medical records on, sub-second latency. Just kind of highlighting medical data is kind of pain, right? This is just 3 examples from once we turn this on of, hey, even just in ADT 08 messages, there are a bunch of in PV 2.3, in GT 1.49, in DG 1.4. These are repeated when the spec doesn't call for it. So need to work out some additional flexibility to either, for each customer, have to maintain a individual customer spec, or probably we'll wind up writing something that's a whole lot more flexible in parsing that makes the adjustments on the fly. To call out data flow here, yeah, it's running. Right, HL7 to Fire 2. So then, yeah, that's kind of like, sweet, we have this data, we're getting it in A format, we're getting it over into Fire. That's gonna power a whole lot of other machine learning that we do on identifying incidental findings, especially for patients that come in for one reason and say, hey, doctor, you should probably look at this guy a little closer or sooner for some other reasons. Want to call out some future work, though, on that's a lot of components. And at least to my naive eyes, it's just some data transformations from one place to another, right? So like, do I need all these, do I need all these other services? And then thinking, hey, I've worked outside of medical too. It seems like a lot of people think of medical as this unique thing, but I'm thinking also from a kind of more general bits. Are there other common translations? Doing a quick search yesterday, there's something called Edifact, there's something called ANSI X12. These are like large industry, either world or US standards on some things. So this got me thinking about what all is Beam in the business of. I think Beam is definitely in the business of how. How are you, or like providing a method for performing your specific business logic and data transformations. That's one of the things that originally sold me, was thinking the expensive part of my business is validating the data, transforming it as I need, and I really like the thought and power of language agnostic, but like that's kind of less critical, but like compute environment agnostic. So at least at the time I was running things in multiple data centers and across multiple clouds. So the thought of here's my business logic in a potentially incredibly portable, or my business logic will work no matter the compute environment. That's awesome. But I wanted to think on, hey, business logic isn't compute. Business logic is the incredible value for businesses, but some data transformation logic is not really business logic in that it's not tied to my business or your business. These things are kind of industry standard, right? HL7 to Fire. Some of these others. So that kind of has me thinking, where would something like that live alongside Beam? So that's kind of, I don't have that worked out, I just kind of thought of that. So, so I guess that's what I got. Thanks, guys.